Hi everybody, and welcome to another camera review. And today I'm looking at the Leicaflex SL, and this follows on from the original Leicaflex, which was produced in 1964 by Leitz of Germany, and the original one was Leica's first SLR camera. So this is the SL, which came out in '68, and it has a few improvements over the original Leicaflex. First of all, it has through the lens metering. The original had a CDS cell on the front of the prism. The focusing screen has been improved on this one. On the original it is all clear glass except for the centre spot. And something they changed, which you may think is better or not, is they removed the mirror lockup feature and put on a depth of field preview lever instead. So I'm going to go over its functions and controls, and hopefully you'll learn something about this camera. Very well made, by the way. Lovely weight to it, solidly built. It is heavy, but it's no heavier than a Nikon F2 with a similar lens. It does take a battery for the metering. Everything else is mechanical, but the metering uses a PX625 battery, which fits in the bottom here. And just remove the cover. It's always best to use a aluminium coin so you don't mark the cover, as somebody has already done. Oops, that fell on the floor. And you pop that in with the plus side facing you. Just put the cover back on. Now the metering on this, it says through the lens, and it's actually a spot meter. It uses the centre circle in the viewfinder for the measuring area. And the way it does that is the metering cell is actually in the bottom of the mount, and I can show you that by lifting up the mirror. Now you can see at the back there is the metering cell, and that reads light through a mirror that is angled off the main mirror. You can just see the framing of it there, and what happens is the light, it's the mirror, but it's like partially transparent, and a small percentage of the light goes through the mirror onto the secondary mirror and then reflected onto the metering cell in the bottom. And because of that, it can read such a small area of the viewfinder, say the centre spot only, which equivalates to around 1/6 of the area of the lens that you're looking at in the viewfinder. So very nice metering system. Well, I've got the lens off, actually I'll just show you the mount briefly. This is a early SL black model, and I can tell that by it's got a black enamel paint rather than a black chrome, which they replaced it with later on. I suppose it was more durable. And also this one has a red plastic lens release button. On the later ones they replaced it with a chrome button instead, again because I think these tended to break. So looking at inside the mount, here you have the depth of field preview lever, and here you have the lever that interacts with the cam on the lens, so the camera knows what aperture you've got set on the lens, and it basically that pushes in on the cam and it affects the pointer inside the viewfinder. Now I'll just show you that on the manual so you can see what you will actually see in the viewfinder. So what you see is that's the viewfinder frame, and at the bottom you see the shutter speed, and the black line shows what speed you actually got set on the dial. That is the centre spot, which is the area of exposure metering. On the right side here you have the exposure meter range between those two black dots, and here is the pointer. Now that is the pointer that moves with that lever for the aperture, and it also moves by the shutter speed setting. So all those move that pointer, and obviously as well as that, initially when you insert the film, the ASA speed setting affects the position of that pointer as well. This needle here is the exposure needle, which obviously comes into effect when you turn the camera on, and that obviously is influenced by light. Now the nearer to the bottom it is, the light is stronger. So basically, to get the what is deemed as the correct exposure, what you would do is you would align this pointer by adjusting the aperture or shutter speed so it's on top of the exposure needle. So it's a very nice system. I say it's spot metering as well, so it's very accurate. So looking at the camera, I've inserted the battery, and you can check the battery, make sure it's okay by pressing the battery check button here. And what you do is you press that in, and as you hold that in, look through the viewfinder, and the exposure needle should go right to the bottom dot in the viewfinder display, and that shows that the battery is okay. I'll just put the lens back on, and I will mention I've already done a video on these lenses because you have to be careful you get the right Leica lens for these cameras, because I made a couple of mistakes. So I've done another video actually called Leica lenses, which you should have a look at. So to put the lens back on the body, you just align the red dot with the release button and turn it till it clicks clockwise. The lenses are beautiful, by the way, very heavy. You can tell they are very well made, and the apertures on them go in half click stops, and on this Summicron 50mm it goes from f2 up to f16. So looking at the top plate of the camera, you have on the right side here the exposure film counter, and that starts off, well, first of all it resets when you open the back, and it starts off 2 notches below 0, which obviously, so it gives you the lead in for the film. So then you start at 0, and then number 1 would be the first exposure. It goes up to number 36. Here is the advance lever, and it has a couple of functions. When you first click it to the first standoff position like that, it switches on the meter. So obviously you have to be careful that is pushed in, otherwise you're wasting battery. And then it advances the film and cocks the shutter when you go around the full distance, and it's quite a long throw, as you can see. So let's cock the shutter. The shutter button itself is in the centre of the shutter dial, and it's a threaded button, so you can fit a cable release if you wish. Looking at the shutter dial, it has speeds of between B for bulb, which you press the shutter and the shutter remains open until you release it. And then you've got settings of between 1 second all the way up to 1/2000th of a second. And I will mention as well, it does have intermediate settings. You can actually set a shutter speed between these settings, and it does actually fire at them, except between 1/4 and 1/8 of a second and 1/30th and 1/60th of a second. There's no intermediate settings between those shutter settings. You also have a flash sync setting, which the maximum one, which is 1/100th of a second shutter firing. The shutter is obviously, like I say, all mechanical, and it has a lovely sound. If I just set it to 1 second and fire the shutter, it has a lovely mechanical spring-like sound. Moving across, you have a flash shoe socket. It's not a hot shoe, doesn't have any contacts. So what you would do to use a flash, you would connect the flash, well, you put the flash on the shoe first, and then you would connect it with a cable to one of these connections here, these sockets. The top one is for electronic flash, and the bottom one is for bulb flashers. Moving across, you have the rewind crank and lever for rewinding the film and tensioning the film, and around that you have a film type reminder. It doesn't actually set anything on the camera, it's just for you to remind you what type of film you've got fitted, i.e. daylight colour film. And you just move that by just putting your thumb something on that little black chrome dot and moving it around. You also have around the rewind crank the film speed setting, which is obviously very important. And on the back here you've got ASA speed settings, and on the front the equivalent DIN setting. And to adjust that, what you do is you hold in the chrome button and then you can spin that to all the various settings. Now to load a film, you open the back by pressing in this button, and then you can press up on here with the arrows pointing and it clicks open the back. Nice thing about these cameras, which I've noticed as well, is they don't use foam for the light sealing. It's like a string or a thin rope. I can't see any foam anywhere on the camera, which obviously helps because that's something that degrades over the years. To fit the film, you pull up the rewind crank. I've got a bit on the lever and pulling it up. Let's see if I can do this for you, and awkwardly. So you drop in, sorry, don't drop the cartridge in first. Actually, what Leica recommend is you put the film leader into this slot first, like so. Just drop it into the slot, he says, like so, and then pull over the cartridge, drop it in, drop down the rewind crank, and then just wind on the film. And I just do it so you can see the sprockets have engaged in the film, like so, and then just slightly take up some slack off the film, put down the rewind lever, and then you can close the back, carry on winding, advancing, set the shutter speed to a high shutter speed and fire a couple of shots. And now you see frame counter is on 0, and you could actually try and get an extra frame there. You could try firing on that shot and getting a 37 exposures from 36. So that's how to load the film, and then to rewind the film at the end, let's just take a few shots. You have a button on the bottom and you press that chrome button in, and that releases the sprocket inside. So then all you do is pull up the rewind lever, getting the wrong end, and rewind the film. I think the counter counts backwards for you as well while you're doing that. It does. And you can feel it when it releases. Now you can rewind the film all the way back into the cartridge if you wish, but because this is just a test roll for me, I'm going to leave the end out. Open up the back again, and I can take out the cartridge. So looking at the front of the camera, you have a self timer function which is all nice mechanically controlled, and what you do is you would advance the film and set your shutter speed, set your exposure obviously and focus, and then you pull around the self timer, and you set the self timer going just by pressing the shutter button as normal. Set the self timer off, get that lovely spring sound, and obviously it counts for about 10 seconds and then fires the shutter at the end. Here, as I said earlier, is the depth of field lever, preview lever. So if you look through the viewfinder while pressing that, it shows you what's in focus, and obviously it stops down the lens to the working aperture. Another things I can tell you, it's got strap lugs, it's got the names on, it's got Lights Wetzlar Germany on the bottom with the serial number, and that's a tripod socket as well. So the other things I've got for this are the original manual, which is nice, a original box, but I can't see any reference on the box to this actual serial number, so I can't say it's the genuine box. I do have a hood for the lens, and that just fits on like that, and you can put it the other way around, and you do get a cap. You can have a plastic cap that slots on and goes around these lugs, so you can then put it in your nice beautiful Leica case which you can get for these cameras. So this was made up till 1974, the SL, and then in 1976 they replaced it with the SL2, and what they added on the SL2 was they added a split image microprism to the centre spot in the viewfinder for aiding with focusing. They also added a aperture readout in the viewfinder, because obviously in this one is the shutter speed setting along with the exposure needle, and they also added viewfinder illumination, and instead of having a cold shoe it had a hot shoe. So those were additions to that. There's less SL2s than SLs. The SLs are the most common of these cameras, but after the end of the SL2, which was in 1976, they then started producing the Leica R cameras, starting from the Leica R3, and it changed then because obviously these are made in Germany, and then from the Leica R3 onwards were made in Japan by Minolta for Leica. So there you go, let's look at the Leicaflex SL. Hope you've enjoyed this overview, and hope to catch you soon with another video. Bye for now.